what's going on, everyone? Arty ZiFF is in the house today. What's going on, Arty?
Nothing much, man. Excited to be a guest on the show.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Um, you've been kind of under the radar lately, man. Been trying to get you on for a while, but you're here finally, so that's
Yeah.
good. What you been up to lately? You haven't been doing much content creating, right?
No, not much content creating lately, just because things as the kids say, life has been lifing recently. But at the same time, I am actually moving in 8 days. So once I move, I'll be in a more conducive environment to be creative. So I'll be streaming as much as I once was before, even though I haven't necessarily been on camera. I've been doing things behind the scenes. So I have scripts upon scripts of YouTube content that I plan on making, surrounded by wrestling, surrounded by hip hop, surrounded by gaming, as well as a whole bunch of series that I plan on doing on Twitch. And then also the thing that most people know me for on Twitch, the ZNWA, which is my very own EFED, will be returning this April as well.
Yeah, so I came across your channel because of like the wrestling stuff, but you do way more than just wrestling then, right?
Yeah. Hip hop content, wrestling content. Working on a couple of think pieces that has some wrestling elements to it. I do music. I have my own sports podcast, Facts Over Acts, which we're about 4 years deep into this thing. So I've been all over the place.
Damn, and how'd you get started? Like you were just like, man, I'm gonna start making videos about like wrestling and just tell people how I really feel, or was it just like, or yeah, how did you end up doing all this craziness?
So I've always had like a hand in content, even before YouTube was like a really big thing. All I did was watch YouTube all day from like its inception in like 2006 for the next like decade. 90% of what I consumed was just YouTube videos. And then one day I decided to start making YouTube videos myself. And I uploaded every day for 2 years straight. And they were like pretty awful videos. I'll be honest. Like the audio quality was terrible, the video quality was terrible, but it was good practice to get out. And then during the pandemic, everybody's in the house, nobody's doing anything. So me and two of my closest friends from high school, we started the Facts Over X podcast. And we did that for about 6 months. And I started up making YouTube videos again. And my best friend, shout out to B Mike, he was streaming on Call of Duty. He was streaming Call of Duty during the pandemic. And he was like, go ahead and hop on Twitch. So I hopped on Twitch, and it kind of just blew up from there. I wasn't expecting it to be a thing. It was kind of an hobby, but it was 2 years there where Twitch was my primary source of income. I was doing a lot of big numbers, and then I would sprinkle a little bit of wrestling in there. And I noticed when I started getting my, you know, biggest numbers, when I started performing best, was when I was doing wrestling stuff. So I slowly started transition from doing content, variety content, to doing mostly wrestling.
So do you feel like you've mastered the arts of like this content creation thing? Because I feel like, man, like I'm so like way behind the game, like learning all these fucking new systems and shit. And like when TikTok went away for a while, I was panicking, dude. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do without TikTok, dude? I gotta learn
Yeah.
Red Note now. Like, what the fuck?
When it comes to mastering content, not even close. I will say I'm honored that most people who consume my content say like you're the most successful content creator or streamer that I know personally, which I greatly appreciate that. When it comes to mastering it, I'm not even close to where I want to be. I'm the kind of person I watch back a lot of my own content to see where I can improve, and I think there's a lot of places that can be improved, not even just in a wrestling space, because I think it's a lot of voices that's missing in wrestling media, but I think just in content general, when it comes to quality, when it comes to time management, I mean, I have a full-time job, so I want to be in a place to where content creation is my full job. So I wouldn't even say I'm sniffing the door of having things mastered, as long as I'm still clocking into a 40-hour a week shift.
I feel it. Damn, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Nah, that's what's up, Artie. I'm excited to go over this pay per view that you chose for us today because we are going to be traveling back in time to 2002.
Yep.
And man, dude, this fucking pay per view was so much fun to rewatch. I completely forgot about this one, man. So I'm glad you picked it. But
Did you just recently rewatch it because we were doing the show?
oh yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Mm.
dude, I have to, man. I gotta like prepare and make sure. Like I have the worst memory when it comes to these things, dude. So I usually go back, I rewatch, I take notes, and I also do some research. Some of the things that like people might not know about the matches and stuff. So we're gonna dive
Yep.
deep into this thing, which I'm really excited for. But this was the first Survivor Series that had the first ever Elimination Chamber, right?
It was. Yep, first ever chamber.
And it also featured a big debut by Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. He debuted on this pay per view. So this pay per view was really important in many ways. But what was the reason or one of the main reasons why you chose this pay per view out of all of them?
So, not to age anyone, I'm like right in the middle of where most wrestling fans are. This I was 7 years old when this pay-per-view took
Oh,
place.
you're such a yeah. Throw it in my face. No, I'm just kidding.
This is the first and only pay-per-view that like I was ever able to get. I'm not going to say like I grew up uh, super below the poverty line or anything, but I also didn't grow up in a household where my dad was paying $60 a month per pay-per-views.
Yeah,
So if I had to choose one pay per view, like this was the one, and this sticks out so fondly to me, not because it's the only chamber. Which, if I'm being honest with you, before I rewatched it, like once last week, once you asked me to be on the show, I actually rewatched it in October as well because my girlfriend she loves wrestling now. Like when me and her first started dating, I got her into wrestling and she loves Roman, she loves Bianca, she likes wrestling currently. But if I try to show her anything like pre 2021, she's like, "This is the worst thing I've ever seen."
oh, for real?
Um,
Damn,
and,
that's
and
funny.
this is one of the only pay per views I've ever showed her like that she's enjoyed as well. So we watched it together back in October,
Yeah.
and the reason that I had to get this pay per view is because if you ask 7 year old me who my six favorite wrestlers were, the six men that's in that chamber were my six favorite wrestlers. And
Yeah.
that's not even a joke. And I was also a Raw kid. Like for some reason, I didn't watch like the whole SmackDown 6 era of SmackDown. As a kid, I missed it because a 7 year old kid, I'm not appreciating like work rate and ring. I want to see Triple H spit water. I want to see Kane choke slam people. Like I wasn't really trying to see these
Yeah,
five
you're
star
not worried
classics.
about what Dave Meltzer is saying in the dirt sheets or nothing
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Not at all.
Yeah. Damn, so this pay per view was pretty much just like made for you specifically, then, probably, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Up until this point, I didn't know what pay-per-views were like. I was the kid that the day after the pay-per-view, before you went to school, you went ahead and went on WWE.com and just saw like the screenshots of who won the matches, but you didn't actually see it. Like until WWE Network came out, or if my brother just happened to get his hands on like a pay-per-view DVD,
Yeah.
this was the only pay-per-view that like I'd seen pretty much all the way through up until WWE Network came out in like 2014, 15.
Yeah, dude, this was a crazy, crazy time in the WWE. So let's jump straight to it, man. This Survivor Series, this was Raw and SmackDown. They both had like a big rivalry. The brands were split, but
Yep.
this Survivor Series featured both Raw and SmackDown, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
So let's go to the first match because let's see, is there anything here that is worth mentioning before? I guess we should start off by mentioning that this was at the Madison Square Garden in New York. So right off the bat, a big building, a lot of history in this building. So every time WWE has a pay-per-view in Madison Square Garden, they have to go all out. And they
Big
fuck.
audience, tiny ramp every time you're in MSG.
I know it's lovely, dude. I love that setup. It's one of my favorite things about when they have shows there. It's just like those little
Yeah.
things, you know. Um, at this time, Eric Bischoff was the general manager of Monday Night Raw. And fuck, and who was SmackDown? Was it Paul Heyman who was general? Who was the manager at this?
Stephanie was GM at the time.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yep.
And did we see Stephanie at all in this pay per view? I don't think we did. I don't remember seeing
We
Stephanie.
did not, but Stephanie was a very big part of that. The we'll talk about the tag team match later, but she was a very big part of that story setting up that tag match.
Yeah, for sure. Um, all right, the first match was a six-man elimination table match. And again, I went in watching this blind, so I didn't really remember a whole lot about the storylines or anything like that. It wasn't until after the show that I did more research. But I
Yeah.
was really confused about some of these teams for this opening match because it was Bubba Ray, Spike, and Jeff Hardy, right? And they were going against 3 minute warning, including it was Rico. So you had Jamal and Rosie and Rico, and I'm just
Enrico, which is if you're watching that without context, you're trying to figure out why the hell was Rico teamed up with them. To provide context, this happened. Survivor Series was a month after the Billy and Chuck marriage. And if you
mm,
remember, 3 minute warning interrupted their wedding, their ceremony. I think they called it the friendship ceremony, but we knew it. Even 7 year old me knew what was going
oh
on.
yeah, for sure.
Um, and after a 3 minute warning, like destroy Billy and Chuck, Rico essentially started managing them instead of managing Billy and Chuck.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, dude, I definitely remember that, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Can
can't
we
go
take a
around
moment of
that.
silence? Can we take a moment of silence for Rico's theme song? That was a really good theme song. You look so good to me. That was an elite
Oh,
theme song. I don't know what anybody said.
I do remember that. And you know what, dude? I'm not even gonna hate on Rico because I remember going to a show when I was a kid around that time, and we waited after the show for the wrestlers, and Rico was one of the guys that actually gave me his autograph.
That's
So
dope.
I'm always gonna remember Rico for that. So yeah, shout outs to Rico. But yeah, dude, I felt like I was watching something really confusing because I the first question I had is why the fuck is Jeff Hardy teaming up with Bubba and Spike? Where's Matt Hardy? Do you remember what was going on with the Hardy Boys at this time?
Brand split. So Jeff and Matt got split up in a so Jeff was on Raw and Matt that was full version 1 Matt Hardy.
Mm-hmm. And
Which, if we're talking great theme songs, also I can slap a tornado, I can dry up the sea. That is also a great theme song, and that's the reason that Bubba Ray and Devon was split because that's right when they first split, and he was doing the rep. Actually, I don't think he was Reverend Devon quite yet. He was actually in a tag team with Ron Simmons, and they actually lost to Benoit and Angle to get their hands on the tag team titles.
yeah, I think after this is when Devon slowly started turning into Reverend Devon.
He was already doing Testify. He just hadn't
Oh,
done the full transition yet.
oh yeah, yeah. Devon was testifying years before he became Reverend Devon. And I think that's when they started bringing in like Batista and stuff like that to and then that fucking gimmick that almost ruined Batista's
Deacon
career.
Batista.
Yeah, Leviathan. No, he wasn't Leviathan then, was he? Yeah, he
No,
was.
he was Leviathan in the OVW. When he made it to the main roster, he was Deacon Batista.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, man. So already this fucking so much chaos in this first match, and the match hasn't even started yet. Also, it's important to mention who 3 minute warning were. First
Yeah.
question, why were they called 3 minute warning? Do you remember?
Because you had 3 minutes. Essentially, they had 3 minutes uh to wreck house. They came out, murdered everybody, and that was The 7-year-old me was a big 3-minute warning guy. It wasn't until I got older that I appreciated work rate. But in the words of the great Big E, when I was at age 7, I wanted to see big meaty men bumping me. That's all I cared about. And 3-minute warning, 3-minute warning fit that perfectly.
Dude, yeah, and of course, for the people that don't know 3 Minute Warning, Rosie and Jamal, they're part of the bloodline.
Yep.
They are family members of, man, it's like a spitting image of Roman Reigns, but a much bigger Roman Reigns.
Yeah. Yeah. Roman with a lot of carbs. Rosie is Roman's older brother, and Jamal is Umaga. So
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like looking back as a kid, like you said, it's like you don't really pay attention to things like that until you get older and you go back and actually realize who these people are.
yeah.
And Rosie, he went on. He had a pretty decent career in the WWE. I think after that, he even ended up teaming up with the Hurricane at one point, right?
He did, yeah. I forget, was his name still Rosie? I remember he did have like the whole hurricane outfit. I don't recall him doing anything after that, but he definitely had a tag title run with Hurricane actually.
Yeah, and I think his name was still Rosie. But then after that, he got released. I think he got into like some trouble and stuff, and he got released from the WWE. But Jamal ended up having a way better career in the WWE because
Yep.
that later on turned out to be Umaga.
Yeah, and where's William Regal, you manga?
That's right. Yeah. So yeah. So man, we have a lot of fun stuff going on in this opening match. It was a elimination table match, which means you have to put your opponent through the table for them to get eliminated. So we saw a lot of tables broken here, a lot of fun stuff. The babyface team, which was Bubba Ray, Jeff Hardy, and Spike Dudley, after a long and like chaotic but fun match, they got the win with the help of Devon Dudley. Showed up out of nowhere to help his old tag team partner Bubba Ray, which they had a nice little moment there at the end. Um, but what were your thoughts about this opening match? Did you enjoy it? And what was your like some of favorite moments from this?
I enjoyed it a lot. As I get older, looking back at a lot of these like tables matches, TLC matches, hardcore matches from that era, I feel like a lot of them were overdone. Um, and I feel like a lot of them weren't necessary. Like I actually like the product more now where it's rare where you see that type of match because it feels more important. But if you ever had a match like that involved a Dudley or a Hardy, they made the match feel special. So I enjoyed that match a lot. And plus, um, even though they were categorized as big men, Jamal and Rosie knew how to move in that type of match. Like those, I mean, we can see it now with Jacob, and
Dude, they
they
were
know how to
they
move.
were moving like cruiserweights out there, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that shit was crazy. Yeah, man, there was a lot of spots where I felt like they were trying to do something different. Like Jeff Hardy kind of messed up a few spots there, but overall, like you said, man, the 3 minute warning, they were taking big bumps, they were flying around everywhere. It was a fun match, and you can't have Spike Dudley out there without him fucking taking some big crazy bump too.
And I hear he's like an insurance agent or something. Like if it's anybody that we would have put like on a CTE bingo card, it would have been Spike. And somehow he's just living a perfectly normal life out there. Shout out to Spike, but I don't know how that man is walking.
Yeah, dude, I saw some things about Spike Dudley, and he's just perfectly fine, surprisingly.
Yeah, yeah.
But speaking of CTE, we're gonna talk about that later on too, because who was this fucking guy's name? Who was in that thing? Chris Nowinski, was it?
Chris Nowinski, yeah.
We'll
The,
talk.
the, the, the Letterman jacket guy, yeah.
Yeah, the Harvard graduate. We're gonna talk about him too because he was in the show later on. But But yeah, that match was fun. It was a fun way to open up the show. Um, I think after this, what happened after this? I'm gonna have to edit this out, but because I don't remember.
I believe it
Uh,
was a segment
n-
before the next match.
yeah, no, yeah, there was a segment, but I guess I thought I had like looked into what this led to after this, or like what happened with like Jeff Hardy. Do you remember? Did Jeff Hardy continue teaming up with Bubba Ray and Spike, or do you remember anything about if this led to anything else? I guess is what I'm trying to
No,
say.
I'm pretty sure that was a one-off
Mm.
because I believe shortly after this is when Bubba had that. No, that would have been a few months down the line. I remember Bubba had that like very short rivalry with Triple H over the belt, but I think that was a couple months down the line. And then Jeff got into like a small rivalry with D'Lo Brown. Like his run with Bubba was over after this. I believe that Jeff got into a rivalry with D'Lo Brown
Oh,
after this.
okay,
The
that makes
reason they had the rivalry, I don't remember, but I remember I think it was Armageddon after this, and you have to forgive me. My girl calls me her human party trick because my brain just retains stuff that I don't know why. But
that you don't
Armageddon was
need in life.
I don't need it at all. What's my social security number? I gotta think about it. But I remember Armageddon 2002. We got Jeff Hardy versus D'Lo Brown. I do remember that much.
Right on. Yeah, so like we mentioned before, the 3 minute warning after this, Jamal ends up becoming Umaga. And then unfortunately, Umaga passes away a few years later after that in 2009 from multiple heart attacks until one final heart attack. His heart said, "Yo, I'm done. I can't keep doing this." So we lost Umaga very early on. Rosie also passed away not that long ago, 2017, due to heart failure. Um, but yeah, dude, these guys are just they were just something else in the ring, man. That again, you don't really appreciate until now, but these guys were there was
Right.
something special for sure.
Yeah, but when you're a kid, you think of the booking and however like they're booked is how you view them. Like older wrestling fans during that time is like, oh, this guy is so underutilized, this and that. When I was a kid, whoever won the belt was cool to me, and whoever was a mid carder, my 7-year-old brain was like, this guy's a mid carder.
Yeah, pretty much, dude. Simpler times, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there was a few backstage segments after this. Is there anything worth mentioning that you want to point out or talk about before the next match?
No, there's only one backstage segment in this entire show that I really can appreciate, and we can get to that after we talk about the next match.
Perfect. Let's get into the next match. It was a cruiserweight match. Billy Kidman versus Jamie Noble. And Jamie Noble was the cruiserweight champion at the
Yeah.
time, if I'm not mistaken. And man, this was also another great match. These guys were really going in on each other, with no pun intended. This was a snug match.
Yeah.
For a cruiserweight match, like in the mid card, these guys were wrestling like it was like the fucking main event of WrestleMania. It felt like.
They were.
Yeah, they were going back and forth. It was a pretty quick match too. Billy Kidman, dude, he does not look like a cruiserweight. He's in really really good shape. But at the time, again, like you said, just like the way that he was just presented in the mid card, and he didn't really get a whole lot of shine in the WWE. Were you a Billy Kidman fan back then, or do you remember anything about his career at all?
Only thing I remember about Billy Kidman at that age is that he had a really cool theme song. And I like this theme song a lot because it was rap, but at the same time, like as a kid from the east side of Detroit, you don't really get a lot of representation music wise in wrestling. And if you do hear rap, it's what I like to call like coworker rap. Like you always hear like Flow Rida My House is like the WrestleMania theme song. Like I'm not listening to that at home.
No.
So Billy Kidman was the first wrestler I ever heard that had like a real hip hop song as his theme song, and I thought it was so cool. But as far as wrestling goes, I didn't appreciate it as a kid. Like
Yeah.
these guys were tearing each other's heads off. They were amazing in ring, but Vince always presented the cruiserweights as if they were just like, C rate, a bathroom break essentially. So that's how I
Yeah.
treated it as a kid. So I didn't really appreciate that in ring work until I got older. But at the same time, if you're thinking of somebody like Billy Kidman back then, when you're standing next to a Kane, when you're standing next to a Batista, when you're standing next to these guys who are giants, you can call him a cruiserweight. But if you put Billy Kidman on the roster right now, he's the same size as
Half of the motherfuckers. Yeah.
right, right. If you put Billy Kidman in AEW right now, he looks like a monster.
Okay, so I was gonna ask you just a random question. Do you watch AEW at all?
So I try to watch as much wrestling as possible. Like
Yeah.
I have a 40-hour a week job.
Yeah.
You have to produce good wrestling in order for me to watch it. And I supported AEW from the beginning, especially 2019 WWE was like very hard to watch. Outside of Survivor Series, which is one of my favorite pay-per-views ever, 2019 Survivor Series. That was a really rough time to be a WWE fan. AEW was fresh, it was new. I watched AEW all the way up until around the time like MJF dropped the title, and I stay up to date on what's going on, but I don't think they produce good enough television for me to dedicate. What Dynamite is 2 hours, Collision is an hour, Rampage. They don't have good enough television for me to dedicate 4 hours out of my week to watching AEW programming. I'll go ahead, I'll skim through, I'll pick out what I want to see, and I'll watch those segments. But I don't think I can sit through a full episode of Dynamite currently.
No, I feel it, dude. Yeah. Now the reason I asked is because we were talking about theme songs and hip hop theme songs, dude. And my favorite fucking entrance right now is got to be the Hurt Syndicate. Have you heard it?
I have,
Oh
yeah,
my
I
god,
enjoy it a lot.
I love that fucking song, dude.
And I will say I I'm torn. I'm happy to see Shelton and Bobby win the tag titles,
Yeah.
but the current state that AEW is in, especially with the story they're telling around the AEW title right now, I kind of wanted to see Bobby walk through the door and just tear apart whoever was the champion and have a lengthy run with that title. I just felt like that would have made it more interesting.
Yeah, but
I don't think just telling
Moxley Hogan was not gonna let that happen.
it's they're just not telling a good story with that whole Death Riders thing, right? Like it literally doesn't make sense.
No, I
Like if
don't like it
somebody was
either.
watching AEW for the first time and I was trying to explain to them what was going on around that story, I wouldn't know how to explain it because there's so many elements of that story that just does not make sense to me.
No, yeah, I feel it, dude. I was kind of hopeful last night because Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega were talking about Moxley, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking when the Death Riders came out at the end of the show, I'm thinking, man, it would be a lot more interesting if Ospreay and Kenny Omega do the save, and
Yeah.
it was Jay White, and he got no reaction, and it was just like, here we go, another week of just whatever they're
Yeah.
doing. But yeah, go ahead.
And this is another thing that bothers me about that story is the Death Riders are here to like take over AEW and hold AEW hostage. And the person that stepped in as the savior of AEW is Edge, who's been there for a year and a half and was injured for like that doesn't make sense at all. Like let's say you went ahead and took your job hostage and the dude that was like the trainee that just got there 3 months ago was like, "I'll save the job," but the guys that's been there since its inception is just sitting backstage eating catering. That doesn't make much sense to me.
No, yeah, and like the worst part about all of that is the things that they're doing, the Death Riders, like they're literally trying to commit murder on TV, right? And and even like their own fans, I feel like they're not really buying this because who I know we all know that this is a work, right? We're all in on the
Right.
joke, but they're doing some things that's like clearly obviously fake. Like there's got to be a little element of truth in there. And I saw the perfect sign last night on Dynamite. Someone was holding a sign that said, "Make kayfabe great again."
Yeah,
Because
which we've seen examples of that recently. I think AEW has desensitized their fans to violence, which, as I just said earlier, I like when there's one Extreme Rules match every couple of months. Like, for example, we saw KO hit Randy with that power driver, and we haven't seen Randy since. Like they sold that as a devastating move. That man got dropped on his head, and
yeah,
we're supposed to believe that he's hurt. So if the Death Riders are doing these things to like quote unquote kill these people, one, you have to present it in a way to where we actually think they're murdered, and two, they have to be gone for a while, which means you can't do it to half the roster. Like when you do it, these moments have to be important. When they did it to Danielson, it felt important because it was the first time and we hadn't seen Danielson since. But since they done it to Danielson, they've come out on TV and they've done it every week.
yeah. And they're kidnapping people. They're tying people up. They're, and a lot of it is like I can't even suspend my disbelief. It's hard for me. I want to, but it's hard for me to be like, okay, I can really see them doing this, you know? And I think that's the part that takes me out of that whole thing, but we'll see, man. There a lot of people have hope and they think that's going to lead to
I
somewhere, but
I
I don't
want
know.
AEW to succeed. I'm not one of those quote unquote AEW haters. I like when wrestling is good, it's competition for other companies, and we get to see great wrestling across the board. But it's just it's hard to watch that product in its current state.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get back to the WWE because then people are going to be like, "Oh, these guys can't stop talking about AEW." But yeah, the cruiserweight match with Billy Kidman and fuck, I totally drew a blank already. Jamie Noble.
Jamie Noble, yeah,
Jamie
with
Noble.
Nydia.
Yeah, Nydia was out there, and all I can think about every time I hear Jamie Noble and Nydia is, Jamie Noble's voice whenever he was trying to get Nydia to make out with someone. Do you remember that?
I do not remember that. Also, I have to say this era of wrestling, um, I feel like it's little nuggets in there that I missed out as far as like character goes because I was also a kid and you're like watching wrestling in 2002 had a lot of moments that you would be embarrassed if somebody walked in a room. Like a segment would come on and you would pray like I hope nobody walks in the room right now while this segment is on. And JB Noble definitely had one of those characters.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you. I'm not gonna say how much older. No, I'm just kidding. I was born in '91, so 2002. I was like
Okay,
what, 11, 12, or something like that.
you got 4 years on me. Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad then. No, Jamie Noble would get Nydia to make out with like just random people, and he would just be like, because I don't know if you remember his character, but he was like this kind of like redneck, like white trash hillbilly type character.
I mean, I could kind of assume by the jeans that he wrestled in.
Yeah, so he had like this really like bad, like I don't know if it was like a southern accent or something, but he would just be like, "Yeah, girl, yeah, Nydia, yeah, get in there, yeah," but like the most ridiculous voice ever. And that was so fucking hilarious to me. Those two were a fun fucking pair when they were together. But yeah, I think Billy Kidman ended up winning this match and he became the new cruiserweight champion, right?
Kidman did win, and actually to a pretty big pop. I don't remember the cruiserweights being important when I was a kid, but rewatching that, that was probably like a top three pop of the night. Billy Kidman winning that match.
Yeah, I mean the Madison Square Garden fans, like those New York fans know their wrestling, I feel like.
Yeah,
And that match, dude, was pretty fucking crazy. So I think they really appreciated what those two did, Jamie Noble and Billy Kidman. Yeah, it was. And also, you got to remember, look at what the first match was. It was a crazy table match, and these guys,
yeah, they started off hot.
yeah, so they were like, we got to follow that, and they did, which was crazy. All right, let's go on to the backstage. There was a few backstage segments here. Which one was the one that you wanted to talk about?
Can we give a kudos? Like this is something that I even appreciated as a kid. I know women's wrestling now is probably better and more prominent than it has ever been. In the 2002, women's wrestling wasn't really a thing to write home to. Like Vince clearly prioritized as Jerry Lawler would call them puppies and bra and panties matches, things like that over the actual in-ring product. But can we just give a kudos to Victoria's character work? And that was something that I even appreciated at that age. She essentially had this the backstory to this next match that we're getting into is that Victoria essentially saw herself as like a shunned lingerie model, and Trish got into the business and was gatekeeping her from getting into the business because she wasn't as pretty as her. So she had like this character where she would hold this mirror and like tell herself that she's pretty, but she would be like crazy about it. Like 7-year-old me even acknowledged like, yo, this lady is insane. And I dug Victoria. Like Victoria was one of my favorite, was probably my favorite women's wrestler when I was a kid, up until probably Mickey James walked in the door.
Nice. Yeah, Victoria, man. Yeah, she was badass, dude. She was badass. I rem- um I remember watching back this backstage segment and the F view. The F view? I'm like,
Yeah.
what a fucking creepy ass camera. Like, is that something that they did just for this segment, or were they doing this before? Do you remember?
That was a thing that they did to try to get like backstage dirt or scoops and incorporate it into the storyline. And it was supposed to be someone that was actually behind planning those cameras, but I don't remember what happened. I don't think they ever actually like went through with the storyline. So I don't think it was a payoff to it.
So it wasn't just for the Trish Stratus and Victoria
No,
thing. It was
yeah,
like for everyone.
It, it was a thing. Like, I would kind of compare it to how every time there's some dirt backstage now, you'll see like Karrion Cross lurking in the shadows. As essentially that FU camera was the Karrion Cross of the ruthless aggression era, but it was never a payoff to like who was setting up those cameras.
Now, when I was watching this backstage segment with Victoria, again, I went in cold. I wasn't really sure what was going on. I just saw a creepy camera in the women's locker room, and Victoria is talking to herself in this mirror like a mad lady. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So, like, she kind of starts talking shit to herself a little bit in this segment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, essentially telling herself that she's not as pretty as Trish, that everybody hates her, and she played this character really well, and they actually did like a recap segment, but this the match itself we'll get into, I think it was pretty underwhelming, but the build up to this match, I think Victoria really carried it. She did a good job at painting herself to be crazy, and they had a lot of things leading up to this, like some really violent stuff. Like they had some pretty brutal chair shots in there, which you hadn't seen out of the women's division up to that point. They had some pretty like grueling backstage brawls, which was like just as hardcore and like it had just as many crazy spots as like we would see out of a Jeff Hardy, Bubba Ray kind of segment that we just talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Um, I guess, yeah, dude, because this was 2002. This was very, very early on, and we didn't really see a whole lot of like serious women's matches like this, especially not any hardcore matches. So that was like they were kind of I guess what's the word, like they kind of paved the way for like a lot of the women nowadays. Again,
Yeah.
this fucking Survivor Series was the start of like a lot of new things, like the Elimination Chamber, which we'll talk about later on. But also women's hardcore matches, dude, which is, you know, in this time like nothing like you ever see. And these two women, Trish and Victoria, man, they beat the fuck out of each other.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
match
they
was
did.
fucking brutal.
And when you think of women's wrestling from that era, you don't think of good matches, but rewatching it, this was a really good solid match, and it wasn't just a solid match from the standpoint of them using weapons or it being a hardcore match. Like it was a really good wrestling match.
Hmm. Yeah, they made it work, dude. Like, I watched this live with Victoria, or I think her real name is like Lisa Marie on IG or something like that. You can find it. It's like on Facebook if you Google, Victoria Trish Stratus. She does a watch along of this match, and she talks about everything that went wrong in this match,
Yeah,
which I thought was really interesting because, like you said, the match when you're watching it, you're not paying attention to like the little things. It was really good. It was hard hitting. There was a story there. These women beat the crap out of each other. Like, it was a fun thing to watch. But there was
and
a
I
lot of
will
things that,
say,
yeah,
unfortunately, this is probably my least favorite match of the evening. Just because although it was really good, I feel like every match on this card was perfectly executed. And I did not like the finish to this match at all. They built up Victoria in that mirror a lot. And I thought that she was going to use that mirror to help her get the win at some point, which they didn't do a mirror spot, which didn't make sense to me, especially considering they didn't continue the rivalry after this. And also, I need to watch maybe more. I don't recall that being Victoria's finish, but having a match that hardcore being the end of the match was a fire extinguisher, essentially snap suplex spot. Like Trish lost to a snap suplex, and I
yeah,
think that was a terrible payoff to what these
you
women
know,
have been building over the course of like months at this point.
yeah. No, it was. You're right because it was like, okay, these women are in a hardcore match. They're hitting each other with all kinds of shit, but Trish gets pinned after a suplex. It's like what the
Yeah.
fuck? um, and yeah, that's exactly what Victoria said on this live. She was like, first of all, she's like, I broke my nose in this match.
Yep.
She's like, for a minute there, I couldn't breathe, and the mirror was supposed to be the finish of the match. But you can see it because I replayed it back. Trish Stratus, well, Victoria sets the mirror on the corner,
Yep.
and Trish Stratus accidentally steps on the mirror, breaks it because it was a gimmick mirror, and well, there goes the finish. So then Victoria goes to grab the fire extinguisher, but I guess there was two of them, and she grabbed the one that had the pin on it. So one of them had the pin, the other one didn't. She was supposed to grab the one that didn't have the pin, and then
Okay.
when she goes to spray Trish, it doesn't go off.
I need to watch her watch along then because like I was really invested in this match up until that finish. It was underwhelming. And also I don't think they showed Trish stepping on the mirror on camera
Yeah, they
because I
showed
was
it.
expecting. Okay,
Yeah,
I must have missed that because I was expecting that mirror spot. Then when she hit the snap suplex, I saw the mirror cracked, and I'm like, I don't know where I got lost. Like, did Peacock skip this mirror spot and I didn't see it? But like, that's what the whole build up to this match
yeah.
was that mirror.
No, it was on there, dude. It was very quick, but you can see Trisha's foot, like she accidentally stepped on it, and the mirror like fucking just crumbles like paper, dude, because it was
Yeah,
gimmick. Obviously, it was gimmick mirror. Everything
right.
else wasn't gimmick though, like the trash cans and like the kendo sticks, I guess, according to
Yep.
Victoria. The only thing that was gimmick was the mirror, and because it was gimmicked, as soon as Trish Stratus just like put her foot on it, the whole fucking thing just fucking shattered. So there goes the finish to that match. Um, but the rest of the match was pretty good. Besides the finish, I really enjoyed this also. And Victoria won this one. She retained the women's championship, which I did not think was going to happen because it's Trish Stratus, But
Right. But at the same time, a lot of people watching this match blind might think that Trish was like this big megastar. But as far as like being in ring, Trish was still pretty green as far as like being the head of that women's division. She had won that women's title at the previous Survivor Series.
Yeah.
So she really only had like a year of in-ring experience at that point. She wasn't the Trish that like we think of when we think of women's wrestling yet.
Yeah, also Victoria too mentioned that too. She said that she herself she was the rookie in this match compared to like
Yeah,
Trish Stratus, who was also pretty new during this time. So they had like both of these, women were fairly new, that kind of rookies, but
right.
they went out there and just fucking they did the damn thing, But yeah, that was a match that was a women's match for this Survivor Series 2002. Then we had some more backstage segments to build up the next match. Eric Bischoff had a confrontation with the Big Show. Big Show was telling Eric Bischoff, "You shouldn't have traded me, pal." Eric Bischoff was the general manager of Raw. Big Show at this time was on SmackDown, and he just came over to tell Bischoff, "You just traded the next WWE champion." And then we moved on to Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
The fucking the probably the best manager fucking duo here with Paul Heyman and Lesnar, other than Paul Bear and the Undertaker. These guys, they've always had chemistry, man. I always enjoyed these two paired up. What were your thoughts about like Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar during this time?
Well, one kudos to Paul Heyman. Like I said, like my girlfriend started watching wrestling with me during the pandemic, and before she even cared about like right now, she'll use gimmick and oh that's a work, that's a shoot. Like she's fully locked in now. She's fully locked in now.
She's
But
one
at
of
the beginning,
us.
she's one of us. But at the beginning, before she could appreciate like storytelling and all of those things, the first person that she saw like they know what they're doing, they're compelling was Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman was the first person to draw her into like the nerdy side of the business, I guess you can say.
Mm,
So shout out to Paul Heyman. But during this time, like I said, I wasn't really a SmackDown kid.
mm.
But going over to like Brock during that era, even though he was a baby face and he got booked as such, me as a kid, I didn't really buy any of Brock Lesnar's opponents at that time. Just because he looked like such a monster, such a beast, my kid brain was like, nobody should be able to ever beat this guy.
Yeah.
So during that era, I wasn't invested in anybody in SmackDown, like on the main card scene being going against Brock, except maybe Kurt Angle. Like I know a lot of people had like an
Yeah.
emotional connection to Eddie beating Brock. As a kid, that logically didn't make sense to me. That would be like over on the other side, us watching like Rob Van Dam win this match against Triple H. I loved Rob Van Dam, but me, I was like, it's no way this dude is doing a frog splash. This is supposed to beat Triple H. So he was booked really well as a babyface, which I didn't really appreciate until I started back recently watching. Which, by the way, Brock had the biggest pop of the night. Babyface Brock had the biggest pop of the night out of everything. Um, and also during that time, you were 11, 12 at the time. Did
Yeah.
you ever buy Big Show? I know he's 7 feet, 400 pounds. He's supposed to be a monster, but I'd never like bought into like I was never intimidated or like, oh no, Big Show showed up, like shit is about to hit the fan. I'd never believed in Big Show it like throughout my entire childhood.
Damn, that's a good question. No.
Because like Kane was scary at one point, Undertaker was scary at one point, Brock Lesnar was Umaga. Like when those guys showed up, you knew somebody was getting their ass kicked. This giant was here. They're unstoppable.
Yeah.
Even watching like Big Show, Rey Mysterio, 7-year-old me is like the Ray's got a chance here. Like I never bought into Big Show. I don't know if it was his booking. I don't know if it
Dude,
was because he was too nice, but like I never hopped on the Big Show train.
I think they just made him too goofy, man. Because you're right. Even though he was like this big giant dude, he was never really like a serious threat from what I remember, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Because that's what I was thinking too. While I was watching this match with Brock Lesnar and the Big Show, I'm like, I don't even remember him ever being champion.
The only reason I remember him being champion is because that moment once we get into the actual match, but Paul turns his back on Brock for Big Show to win the title. Only reason I know Big Show won the title is because I remember that moment of Paul Heyman turning on Brock. I don't remember Big Show's actual title win, and rewatching the match, the way he was booked, Brock was manhandling Big Show like 90% of that match.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, Paul Heyman ended up turning on Brock Lesnar and helped the Big Show win this match. But I should have known, because again, I went rewatching this cold. I should have known that that was going to happen, because going back before the match to the backstage segment with Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman was worried. He was concerned. You know, he was like, the Big Show, you just recovered. This was like right after Brock Lesnar's big match versus The Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. You're
Yep.
still you're still recovering from that match. The next night, Big Show showed up. He took you out. Your ribs are hurt. Paul Heyman's like, I'm worried that you're gonna lose, and I'm like, that's not usually something. I thought that was weird. Like, how is a
Yeah.
manager gonna tell his client, like, I don't think you can beat the Big Show? Like, what? Like, that's so weird. I thought that was off character, but now moving forward, we see what happens in this match, and now it all makes sense. Paul Heyman all along was going to turn on Lesnar, and that's what happened after another quick match. It was like not even like 5 minutes of.
Yeah, actually the official runtime on this match, if I can pull it up real quick, the official runtime on that match was 4 minutes and 18 seconds.
Boom. Yeah, a very short
Yeah.
match. And yeah, man, the Big Show, with the help of Paul Heyman and the help of a steel chair, got the win over Brock Lesnar. And how did you feel about that outcome? I mean, I know you mentioned a little bit that, it's the Big Show, whatever, but like overall, what'd you think about the finish?
Um the I understand where they were going with the finish. At this time, they were really trying to. Vince always had this thing to when he has like really big baby faces, he tries to. He has like this cookie cutter mold of baby faces to where he wants them to like overcome the odds and tell these stories like back against the wall baby faces. He's done it with every like big baby face that's been in the company. And at this time, this was before Batista, this was before Cena, and he wanted Brock to be that guy, but it just didn't work for Brock's character. And I also didn't think it worked for Brock's character because Brock doesn't work without Paul Heyman.
Mm.
And up until we got to Roman Reigns, honestly, I don't think that Paul Heyman works without Brock. I know in between we've had big shows, we've had Cesaro's, we've had Curtis Axel's. Up until we got to Roman, Paul Heyman to me didn't fit with anybody except Brock Lesnar and
Even,
CM Punk.
yeah, I was going to say, even Punk too. I wasn't really big on that whole thing, to
Like
be
it
honest.
was cool because they had chemistry because they're just both good at their job. But you're putting two of the best talkers in the business like side by side. Like Punk didn't need Heyman in order to get the point across of what he was trying to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, dude. Yeah, it was weird to see like Brock Lesnar as like a huge baby face too, because he was like still Brock Lesnar. He was still like
Yeah,
kind of like in between heel and baby face, but the people were loving Brock Lesnar, and I think that's what a big reason why they decided to beat Brock Lesnar at this Survivor Series. Don't you think?
yeah, I would think so in order to build him up, which they ended up doing so because I believe Brock won the Rumble, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how we ended up getting Brock versus Kurt. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I think they could have told a better story, because essentially Big Show was a transitional champion. Big Show lost that belt 3 weeks later to Kurt Angle anyway. So
Yeah,
I
Armageddon.
feel like yeah, I feel like they could have told a much better story with how Brock dropped the belt because the Paul Heyman Big Show thing like never went anywhere.
Yeah, Jim Ross also. I got a quote here from Jim Ross from his podcast from like back in 2022 where he talked about this, and I just want to read a quote here really quick. He said, "It's crazy. It's illogical to beat Brock Lesnar. at the Survivor Series. Why do we need to change the championship? And I wouldn't have booked it. I wouldn't have booked that match. Jim Ross says the match should have never happened if it had the proverbial pencil. If I had the pencil, which has the most powerful weapon in all of wrestling, on one end, the eraser, I would never have booked it. Again, protect your attraction. The 7 foot, 500 pound, 400 pound, whatever the guy comes up as, they don't come along that often. He's an attraction that can't be replaced as far as look, perception, and size. So I think he's saying like just the way that Big Show had to beat Lesnar is what he didn't agree with. I'm
Agreed.
Yeah. Don't book that match. Book another match that Brock and go out and have an athletic contest with. Yeah, so he's saying like again going back to what you said, Big Show not really feeling like an important dude for his size because of what the way that he's winning these matches, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, General said it perfect right there. And Big Show was pretty much out of the title picture after he dropped the belt to Kurt. He was pretty much out of the title picture. By the time we got to that WrestleMania, I can't even recall what Big Show was doing. Is that the sumo match WrestleMania for Big Show?
Oh god, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't
I
remember. You could be right though.
see.
Your memory's better than mine, I feel like.
Coming up WrestleMania 17. Oh, actually, you know what? That was the Undertaker versus Big Show and A Train in the handicap match. That's what Big Show was. Big Show was in a tag team. By the time we got to the Rumble, Big Show was in a tag team with A Train.
Got you. Okay, that makes sense. Well, yeah, that was the match with Brock Lesnar and Big Show. A lot of madness here. But let's move on because up next we had a three-way tag team elimination match, another elimination match, and everything about this was fucking great.
Yeah.
The build up to this was pretty good. Stephanie McMahon had a big part in the build up, like you said. The teams involved in this were pretty good because we were talking about Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit were on one team. Eddie and Chavo, the Guerreros, these teams they make sense to me. Everything except Edge and Rey Mysterio. What the fuck is going on here? Artie, help me out, man. What do you remember about this?
um. So Edge and Rey Mysterio. For anybody that doesn't know, this is the SmackDown 6 right here. I was just recently telling my girl about the SmackDown 6. For anybody that doesn't know, during this time, Paul Heyman was in charge of booking SmackDown. And they asked Paul who did he want to have on his show. And Vince, this is a story told right out of Paul Heyman's mouth. I don't know if you've heard him tell this story before, but um, he was expecting Paul to say, I want Triple H on the show. I want this person on the show. Paul Heyman said, give me Rey Mysterio, Edge, Chavo, Eddie, Chris Benoit, and Kurt Angle.
Mm-hmm.
And in the office at the time was, I think it was Stephanie, Vince, and a couple of other, talking heads. And Paul Heyman said they laughed him out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
They said SmackDown wouldn't draw with those six people. So he was really telling a story around these six people. And
Ended up being a better
Edge
show, didn't it?
ended up being a better show by a mile. I wasn't watching as a kid just because like I didn't really appreciate work rate at that time. But going back and watching it, this was the better show. SmackDown was the better show by far from top to bottom. I mean, they had the cruiserweight division. Um, they had Brock Lesnar at the top of the card. They had those guys with their work rate. They were building undercard guys, which I really enjoyed. Like you had La Resistance. I was a big La Resistance guy. I don't know why. I love those guys. They had some really good stuff over there on SmackDown. And Ray and Edge ended up teaming up just because they got involved in it was a random drawing to pair together teams in order to go into this tournament to determine in order to determine who was going to win WWE tag titles, and they ended up going to the finals to win and lost to Kurt and to losing to Kurt and Chris Benoit. For some reason, we haven't said his name in so long. My brain kind of blanks with Benoit because we just call him like we address him like Lord Voldemort at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
He who shall not be
so
named.
exactly. So
Yeah.
um that's how they ended up teaming up, and like the crowd was behind it, and it ended up kind of sticking. And then I think they had a rematch for those tag titles, and the Guerreros cheated them out of it to kind of build tension, playing mind games, which it obviously paid off when we see how this match ended. So that's how they ended up banding together, because they ended up, having that bond, going through the tournament, making it to the finals, getting cheated by the Guerreros, and then having a chance to get this rematch.
Yeah, before this match, at the Survivor Series, Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle had a backstage segment, and they're like, we're on the, we're on the same page. We're buddies, we're pals, and this, that, and the other. And
Yeah.
Kurt Angle even said, with me and you on the same team, no one can beat us. And I'm thinking like, fuck, that was a crazy tag team, dude. Kurt
It
Angle
was.
and Chris Benoit, like, holy shit, dude.
And they ended up telling a really good story. The story going into this match is that they had a segment like a crowning ceremony, because this was, I think this was the inaugural WWE Tag Team Champions, like with this belt design. And Stephanie was giving them a trophy, and essentially Kurt was calling himself like the star of the team, and then Chris took that some kind of way. So they ended up wrestling each other and having a pretty decent, almost blood feud kind of rivalry while they were tag team champions. And it turns out the whole time it was some good storytelling, because the Guerreros were like kind of planting seeds for them to break up, or they would come out one week and it would cost, Benoit the match. And Benoit would get pissed at Kurt, like, why would you accept them cheating? And then a few weeks later, they would have a rematch and they would help, Benoit cheat. So the Guerreros were kind of the catalyst for this whole rivalry.
Yeah, dude. And this match was fucking crazy, dude. Man, I mean, I feel like we've been saying this about every match, but
Yeah.
dude, this match was pretty insane. It was high paced. There was urgency in this match. It was hard hitting, high flying, and it had everything, dude. It had it all. And I remember when I was watching this match, I remember thinking like, man, they don't make matches like this anymore, dude. Even with like when Eddie and Ray were in the ring, dude, like they're doing some pretty crazy stuff, but like you can see like the intensity in Eddie's eyes, like he's trying to hurt Rey Mysterio, but like obviously he's not hurting him for real, but like the way
But
that
he's making you believe it. Eddie Guerrero was really good at making you believe whatever the hell it is that he was. It was so intense that it was hard to believe that it was a work. But he was also taking such good care of who he was in the ring with, that's why. One regret I have is that I did not appreciate, like I said, at age 7, 8, 9, I didn't care about work rate. I did not appreciate Eddie as much as I should have at a young age. Just going back and watching, like in ring wise, we need to start talking about, for the people that don't, we need to talk about Eddie in the same vein that we talk about Kurt, that we talk about Shawn. Like if we're talking about top 5 in ring, Eddie needs to be right there.
yeah, dude, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was thinking. Um, yeah, dude, I don't know what else to say about that. It was just that's something that I feel like it's missing nowadays in like a lot of these matches. It doesn't really feel the fire's just not there anymore sometimes, which is unfortunate. But yeah, this was a really fun match. Who won this one? It was
The
the
Guerreros.
Guerreros.
And the finish to this match was so well put together, because we see so many times that like the Guerreros cheated. So I believe Ray hit I think Ray hit Kurt with the 619, or no, Ray hit Eddie with the 619, and Edge tagged in, but the ref didn't see it. So the
Mm-hmm.
ref is telling Edge to get back out, and Chavo hits Ray with the belt, and Eddie hits Ray with the, I think was it the El Paso Deathlock was the name of his submission.
Oh, I don't even know.
Um
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he hit him with the El Paso Deathlock, and Edge sees what's going on, so he goes outside the ring to attack Chavo, and he's so distracted by like him attacking Chavo that he didn't even see Ray get put in a submission. And I feel like that was a really unique spot because we see so many times that like in modern wrestler, the partner catches on to what's going on, and they just automatically break up the submission or the pin. But I think that was a really cool like interpretation of it because if you and I are in a tag match, and I see somebody trying to cheat you, I might have like my eyes might I might be seeing red, and I'm out there attacking that guy, and I'm not even paying attention to what's going on in the ring. Edge was 3 feet away from Ray and could have broken up the submission, but he was so busy attacking Chavo, he didn't even see Ray tap.
Yeah, yeah, it's those little things, man, that that make perfect sense, but you don't really see shit like that anymore, which is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was one hell of a match. Anything else you want to add about this match before we move on to the next segment?
Um, no. One thing that I do plan on doing, and I think I want to make content out of it, is going back and watching these Smackdowns like chronologically in order. But I do know at the following pay per view, you had Kurt versus Big Show. I think Ray was doing something else, and I don't know who the Guerreros started feuding with next. But I wish they were drawing this out a little longer because this whole like tag team scene with the SmackDown Six, people talk about it a lot, but I think this whole like them having a tournament and this whole rivalry only lasted for about like six weeks, I believe. It wasn't
Mm,
that long of a span. I wish they would have gave us some more out of that because I really feel like they had time because not a lot of those guys outside of Kurt really turned into huge stars for another like year and a half, 2 years really.
mm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that was a fun three-way tag team match. The next thing that we're gonna be going over, it's not a match, it's more of a segment, but it was a big debut. A big Papa Pump Scott Steiner showed up randomly out of nowhere to interrupt this little New York hate speeches at Matt Hardy and Chris Nowinski. Remember Chris Nowinski? I think I
I
asked you that
remember
already.
Chris Nowinski. So I don't remember Chris Nowinski, but I remember Chris Nowinski. Like that's a name that I remember, and I remember his gimmick was like the Harvard grad with the Letterman jacket. But I
That's a
don't
shoot. That's a shoot,
remember.
by the way. I guess
Oh,
apparently he
really?
really, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember like his full gimmick for like I don't remember too many Chris Nowinski moments outside of this one that we're talking about.
The only reason I remember him is because after his career, I guess he was forced to retire because he had all these concussions. And I'm like, from what? Like, I never seen him wrestle, at least not in WWE TV.
Right.
But apparently, he was forced to retire, and he was like a big like he would talk a lot about CTEs, like concussions and stuff. And he, because he's a
Huh.
Harvard graduate, he became like a neuroscientist, and he started studying like wrestlers that have like concussions and stuff like that. So he dedicated his life into researching concussions because right shortly after that, or a few years after that, Chris Benoit passed away. So he was a big believer of one of the reasons that Chris Benoit did what he did was because he had like brain damage. So pretty much he started like coming after Chris Nowinski retired. He started going after the WWE and basically like forcing the WWE to have a stricter concussion protocol, which
Hmm.
nowadays we know more about that stuff. And like the WWE was trying to like cancel him basically, but then eventually they ended up hiring Chris Nowinski, and I think he still works for WWE if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, dude, he pretty much like when it comes to like CTEs and like protocols in the WWE, Chris Nowinski was a big part of that, which is
Well,
fucking
shout
crazy.
out, shout out to Chris Nowinski. I mean, I know a lot of people miss the chair shots and they miss a lot of stuff about quote unquote old school wrestling, but I would much rather these guys protect their health long term. And if you've ever seen the official CAT scan of Chris Benoit's brain, I'm pretty sure you would be on board to like make sure these guys are healthy before they go out and ring.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, shout out to Chris Nowinski for that. He was part of this segment. He was coming out healing, talking shit to the New York crowd, and Matt Hardy's music hits. And for a second, we think Matt Hardy is out here to save the day and defend the fans of Madison Square Garden. And he joins in on the fun, and they both start talking shit to the New York fans. And then sirens. We hear sirens in the arena. I don't know who this person is, when I was watching this. But then later on, we see this big old Jack dude come out, and everyone knows who this guy is. Even though
Yeah.
I was a big WWF kid growing up, I still recognize this person because he looks like
Yep.
somebody. And this was probably the first time that I was introduced to Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner.
Yeah. Only reason I knew about Scott Steiner, like I said, I was a WWF kid. I didn't really watch WCW. The only thing I really knew about WCW was like Hollywood Hogan and the times that I did watch. Like I was born in 95. So if I can, form memories about '01, WCW was already pretty much dead at that point. But I do remember the WCW versus NWO games on N64, and me and my older brother would always pick whatever brothers were in the game. And it was kind of unfair because I was the younger brother, but somehow he always picked Scott and he always picked Booker T and our Harlem Heat. And I'm like, they're the cool younger brothers. Like I'm supposed to have them. I was stuck with Rick and Stevie Ray for some reason, but that's the reason that I knew who Scott Steiner was, like through the video games.
Yeah.
But good question for you. I know I'm the one that's the guest, but
Mm-hmm.
how do you view Scott Steiner? Because I know very early on they tried to make him a big deal. He had a rivalry with Triple H. Like I think he went against Triple H for the belt at the Rumble the following year. But as a kid, like he looked the part, he had the big muscles, but it was nothing about Scott Steiner that like I wanted to turn on my TV and see when I was that age.
Me personally, I'm biased, dude, because I've told this story before on my show, but I'm gonna tell it again really quick. When I was a kid, my dad used to work at a restaurant next to the Arco Arena, which is was the arena in my hometown back at the time before they created the Golden One.
Yeah.
So my dad was like, "Hey, I got this wrestler's autograph for you." I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, let me see it." And it was Scott Steiner's, Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner on a napkin. Here you go, son. And I'm like, "How did you know who he was?" And he was like, "I didn't." He's like, "I just saw he just looked like a wrestler." And
He
I
was jacked.
yeah,
It's just only so many things you can do,
and
man.
my dad, he at the time we're Mexican, he didn't speak English, so he's like, I just assumed he's a wrestler. And I asked him for his autograph, and it was fucking Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. What are the chances?
Yeah.
So for the longest time in my school binder, I was walking around with an autograph of Scott Steiner. So like, even though I didn't watch WCW, I knew who he was because of reasons like you. Oh, I would play the video games. I would still see, like, I don't know, magazines, wrestling magazines, video games, movies, or whatever the case. I knew who he was. So when he went over to the WWE, I was excited for it. I was rooting for him. I wanted to see him. But after a while, it was just like,
Yeah.
whatever. And I think I don't think his career in the WWE is really short. I think it was like 2 years from like 2002 to like 2004. It
Yeah, I think
wasn't
by the time we
very
got
good.
around to like Mania 20, he was already headed to TNA, which I think a lot of reason why we love Scott Steiner is like more ironic than anything. The Steiner math promos are one of those things that's so bad that it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and he ended up in, like, I never watched TNA either, to be honest, but from what I do remember is that he ended with WWE in like really bad terms, and throughout his
Yeah,
career in TNA, he would just bash the WWE every chance he got, if I'm not mistaken. But now things are
yeah,
good.
that's the case.
Yeah. Now,
Which, yeah, I know he signed a Legends deal. I know he's back on board, and I believe his son just signed a deal. Actually, no, his son is a college football player right now, but also he's one of those guys that you can see being in a WWE. Like, I don't think his son has much like NFL prospects at the moment.
and he doesn't have the NFL potential. Yeah, every NFL reject just goes to the WWE. I feel like. Nah,
Yeah, I mean,
no, I did see something about that. I'm pretty sure the WWE is keeping a close eye on his son. Um, but also one of the big reasons why he was Scott Steiner was able to sign that Legends deal, and he made peace with the WWE is because of Braun Breaker. Um, you know, Scott Steiner didn't want him his issues with the WWE affect Braun Breaker in a negative way. Who, he's doing fucking great things right now, Intercontinental
yeah.
Champion and all that shit. So, good on Scott Steiner that he finally made peace with it. But his WWE career was very, very forgettable, and I think a lot of people did. Are you ready for the main event?
I'm ready for the main event.
The very, very first Elimination Chamber match in history. And like you said, it was your sixth favorite. It was Triple H, who was the champion at the time, Chris
Yeah.
Jericho, Shawn Michaels, Booker T, Bra Van Dam, and Kane. So, get us started here. What were your thoughts about this match? Because you said this was your all time greatest, your six top stars, right? So, what was going through your
These are
mind?
my six top stars. I mean, as a kid, I don't even like I can't remember the build too much from when I was a kid. I just remember they were promoting this match for a minute. Like this was one of those things where you knew it was coming for a minute. You knew the six people that were going to be in a match for a minute. They promoted this like a month in advance, as opposed to I feel like, stuff now. They might make a match for Saturday night's main event on this SmackDown. And I'm like, that's tomorrow. I didn't um so I knew this was coming for a minute, and you're looking at Triple H, which kids at school hated Triple H. Like I was the only kid that I was always a villain guy. Like I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. I loved Vegeta. I loved Triple H watching wrestling. Like I was always a villain guy. Triple H is my goat, my absolute favorite wrestler of all time, which I feel like you don't hear a lot, but I don't think he gets like the credit that he deserves as an in ring performer. Um, and then my older brother's favorite was Shawn Michaels, which that's the reason I love Shawn Michaels so much. Rob Van Dam was just like cool. And he was also the only wrestler from Michigan. Well, Diesel was as well, but I did not think Kevin Nash was cool as a kid. He was just like, like Kevin Nash was like, reminded me of like my dad or something. Like he was just like this very like slow moving, like uncool wrestler to me, which is
Yeah,
ironic because he was Big Daddy cool to a lot of people. You had Booker T, which I mean, you understand representation. Like as
yeah,
a kid, you didn't have many black wrestlers that like you could look up to. You had Mark Henry, who was like having sex with Mae Young. You had D'Lo Brown, like up until under
but
Vince's
but
booking, up
like
until
main
like
event,
2019.
like main event guys.
Yeah, main event. And if they did have to fare the chance at the main event, you knew they were losing.
Yeah,
You got Mark Henry getting title matches in like '05, '06, which he was losing. Like
yeah.
main event wise, Booker T was the only guy who held his own. So I was like, okay, Booker T, that's my guy. Kane, like I said, the little brother dynamic. Kane was, supposed to be Undertaker's younger brother. So I'm like, I'm rolling with the younger brother in this case. And
Mm-hmm.
Matt, unpopular opinion, Mask Off Kane is one of my favorite wrestlers like ever. Like '04 it's a '06. Like I feel like that's prime Kane. And then also Chris Jericho was cool because Chris Jericho was the first guy that like work rate wise I paid attention to because I feel like he was the first guy to kind of work in like working a hybrid powerhouse. Like a lot of the guys you see now, like a Seth Rollins, a AJ, that can do some powerhouse things, but also like work in, the lion salt and the top rope stuff. Like Jericho was the first guy that I looked at. Like the in ring aspect of wrestling is kind of cool too.
Hmm. Yeah, dude. A lot of things went wrong in this fucking match, dude. Um,
A lot.
yeah, dude. A lot of things went wrong in this fucking match. But again, kind of going back to what happened with Trish Stratus and Victoria, they made it work. It was still
Yep.
entertaining. It got the point across. It was fun to watch and all that good stuff. But there was a lot of things that were going on in this match, dude. Like the build up to this, even before the match, Shawn Michaels was backstage and he was like doing an interview and he got interrupted. Like his interview got cut for a Randy Orton video package. Like
The Randy News Network, actually.
exactly. Do you remember anything? Like why did they do that? Do you know?
I honestly don't recall why they did that. One thing that I do know about this chamber is that everybody that was in that match was under the impression that the chamber was going to be gimmicked, which I don't know if you know this. The first few elimination chambers, that was real like steel
Yeah.
on the outside, and those guys thought that it was going to be gimmicked. That wasn't like the usual plexiglass that they use. They thought that was going to be gimmicked, and it wasn't. And then we could talk about a spot that went wrong later on, but the space between the top of the chamber and
Yeah.
the actual chamber, like the concept that the wrestlers that were shown had much more space up there to do spots than when they actually got in the chamber. You really had like 4 feet of space. So you're a 6 foot man trying to jump off this much space, and you can't really get as much, launch and air as you're used to getting jumping off of a top rope. So this match it was told to them that it was going to be gimmicked. That when they got into the actual match, they had to work with what they had.
Dude, they showed the video package of how they built this before the match. Like, how do we know
Yeah.
that this is it's like this is straight up metal, but they don't tell the
I
wrestlers
also
that?
think
Like
I think they were trying to sell it. I think they were trying to sell it to us that this thing wasn't gimmicked, but I think that they told the wrestlers like, "Oh yeah, like you'll be good." I think that they were, putting a video package out there to try to make it look cool.
yeah, no, they should have showed the wrestlers a video package instead of us. Like cuz man, dude, that thing looked brutal. Yeah, Eric Bischoff on screen was taking full credit for this, saying that he changed the wrestling business forever after this, and he's revolutionizing the wrestling industry and taking all the credit or whatever. But I guess turns out that Triple H reportedly, allegedly, I don't know, now let's say reportedly, because this was a quote from Triple H. He said that the concept of the Elimination Chamber was he Triple H drew it on a napkin, but it was designed by someone else. So in a
Oh,
way,
okay.
Triple H had some, hand in creating this. But yeah, he also went on to say that the person or the people that made this are not wrestling fans. Like the people that created the actual cage itself have no
Yeah.
idea what the fuck we do, because it was straight metal. Like you said, the pods were like awkwardly placed so close to the roof. Like it was like literally hell for these six for
It
these
looked
six
like here,
stars.
and is a lot of liberties that you can't take for granted inside of a wrestling ring, but in a match like this, like even taking the most basic bump, you're taking that bump on metal. It's only so much give that you can have on solid metal.
They also all six of these stars they did multiple interviews like years later talking about this match. Every single one of them said that the first time that they saw the cage, the elimination chamber, was the day of.
Wow.
So that they had no idea what it was going to look like until they got to the arena. And then once they got there, then they put the match together. But they said like, man, like I even noticed it too when Booker T came out in his entrance. Booker T, his face told the whole story. Like he was looking at the chamber and he was like worried. He was just like, "Oh my god, what am I getting myself into?" Like his expression
Yeah.
told it all, dude. Um, but yeah, dude, this, but it kind of when you're doing like a first time ever thing like these guys, it's pretty fucking risky and yeah, a lot of things went wrong, and we can talk about the spot that you're referring to. One of the big things that went
Yeah.
wrong was the frog splash, the RVD frog splash. Why don't you tell us a little
Yep.
bit about that?
So it through the it's actually pretty early in the match. I recall it being later on. It's actually pretty early. RVD hits Triple H with a frog splash off of the top of the chamber, which is a pretty cool spot your first time watching it. But rewatch it after you listen to this. RVD's niece crushed Triple H's windpipe to where like Triple H had to get the medical attention after that match. He could barely breathe. But if you watch that match, you can see in that spot his knee going directly on it. And Triple H, like it looks like he's just selling a hell of a frog splash. Like, no, his windpipe is crushed. And you can see him, laboring hard to breathe, all of that for the rest. Like, I don't that man is a warrior because I don't know how you finish the rest of that match barely able to breathe and you have a crushed windpipe. And it's like very evident throughout. Once you know that information, it's very evident throughout that match that that's what happened.
Yeah, dude, I think Triple H had the toughest night out of all six of these guys because Triple H, he was the first one in. He started the
Yep.
match with Rob Van Dam, and he was the last one with Shawn Michaels. And besides getting his fucking windpipe crushed, he bladed. I don't know if he bladed if it was a hard way, but he got busted open pretty early in the match. Triple H did.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, dude, fucking the referee ended up throwing the X after that spot. Um,
Yeah.
because it was he Triple H wasn't selling. Triple H was literally fucking hurt, and he barely got through the match. But with everything that was happening, like them, the first time seeing the chamber, putting the match together, and trying to put all of this, into something doable. Triple H goes on to mention that they forgot to plan out the finish, so they had to
Wow.
call most of it on the fly. And it was Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, the last two guys. So it's they know each other real well. They have good chemistry, so they're like, we can call it, once we're out there. But before that, so many things were going the wrong way. Like that frog splash, Triple H almost got taken out. He couldn't breathe, whatever. And then another thing too that was funny that it's worth mentioning. Um, we saw Kane come out. His pod opened up before Shawn Michaels, and I guess that wasn't supposed to happen. I guess Shawn Michaels'
Huh.
pod was supposed to open before Kane's, and they had all these spots planned, but they opened up whoever the guy opening up the cages opened up the wrong pod, and it's like, well, everything that they planned is just gone to shit now.
Wow.
So they had to, improvise again. So fucking crazy. I can only imagine like the fucking pressure that these guys were under during this whole fucking thing, man. It was
Yeah, that's
yeah.
I mean, for all of those things to go wrong, just watching the match, even watching it now, not knowing all of those things, it's still a hell of a match.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, they made it work.
Mhm.
It was really good. I'm trying to think of see what else besides all those things. Yeah, the only other thing I can think of is like after the match, Triple H did an interview where he was saying that they forced them, they being like the WWE forced them to go to the hospital that night, and he didn't want to. But he was forced to go, and he was forced to stay in that hospital 24 hours after that because his windpipe swelled up, and I guess his throat was just like sticking out.
Wow.
And he wanted to go home, but the doctor told him, "Yeah, you can go home, but that thing is gonna get swolled up. You're not gonna be able to breathe, and you're basically gonna die." So Triple H stayed in the hospital, and everything went well. But man, that was a scary spot with Rob Van Dam.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy stuff here that we saw, Artie.
That's
Um,
also a very guy thing. So all the men, which I assume is most of the demographic for wrestling content is men. Start going to the doctor. I know that's the thing we don't do. You might have a serious medical emergency, and instead of me going to the doctor, I just call up Snug like, "Hey man, your foot ever fall off before?" And you're like, "Yes."
just drink
Just go
some
ahead.
tequila. You good?
You'd be all right, man. Start going to the doctors, fellas.
Yeah, man. But yeah, other than that, dude, fucking the last two men for this elimination chamber was Triple H and the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels.
Yep.
Shawn Michaels hit his super kick. Boom, big pop after he hit the super kick. And then he got the pin 1, 2, 3. Shawn Michaels pinned Triple H. That got an even bigger pop. And they blew the fucking roof off Madison Square Garden after this. Shawn Michaels, new world heavyweight champion. Thoughts on the finish? What did you think about Shawn Michaels being the one to win the first ever Elimination Chamber?
So a few things. One, I will say the build to this was really nice. If you remember, this was after Sean's hiatus. They went to go reform DX and Triple H turned heel, doing that pedigree on him in the DX shirts. I feel like that's one of the most memorable moments in wrestling history. They also had the thing trying to find out who attacked Sean backstage, and it turned out to be Triple H. It was a really big build up to this moment. I think the only thing that takes away from this moment is one, the brown tights. I don't know why Sean decided to wear brown tights on the biggest night of like arguably his career, but like it's Shawn Michaels in brown tights just feels like something that we shouldn't see. Like Shawn Michaels in brown tights is the equivalent. I see you got on the Kings hat. I assume you're an NBA fan.
Yeah.
Do you remember those like copper penny Mavericks jerseys?
Oh no, I don't.
you after this, look it up. Like in the mid two
That
thousands,
sounds terrible.
the
I'm glad I
Mavericks
don't
had an
remember that.
alternate jersey that was like a copper brown. That's what I think of when I think of Shawn Michaels in those tights. And then also they had a 3 stages of hell match at Armageddon with Triple H won to win the title back. And then they kind of just went away from the whole Shawn Michaels Triple H thing, which this was a blood feud that I feel like they could have dragged out all the way until Mania. But I think by the time we got to Mania, I'm pretty sure this next Mania was Triple H Booker T, and then you had Shawn Michaels Jericho. And I feel like this was a blood feud that you could have dragged out all the way until April.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember thinking the same thing. Shawn Michaels just looked hella weird in this match because
The
he was rocking like the 2016 fucking AJ soccer mom
AJ,
haircut.
yeah, he definitely had the Dodge Caravan cut too.
Yeah, dude, and then the brown tights, and then the cowboy boots. And in that same interview that Triple H did talking about the Elimination Chamber, I guess he even like when he saw Shawn Michaels putting those things on, I guess Shawn was like, "What the fuck? What are you looking at?" And Triple H was just like, "Nothing." And he just kept doing his thing. But yeah, Shawn Michaels like fucking ridiculous, man. That was crazy. But yeah, dude. Other than that, dude, this fucking PLE is definitely one for the books, Artie.
Yeah.
That was so much fun. But yeah, dude. Any final thoughts about this pay per view before we get up out of here?
No, just the reason that I picked this is as a kid, like I said, this was my favorite pay-per-view and watching it back since I've been an adult. I will say it's a lot of things from your childhood that you should leave there. There's a lot of video games I've gone back and watched, a lot of shows, a lot of pay-per-views that I thought was good as a 7-year-old, and I went back and watched and they were awful. And I'm mad I ruined that experience for me. But 2002 Survivor Series was not one of those things. I think from that era, like from top to bottom, this is one of the best pay per view. This is probably the best pay per view of 2002 by far, if not that entire, Ruthless Aggression era.
I'm afraid I gotta agree, man. I think you're
Mhm.
absolutely right, Artie. because yeah, watching it back was so much fun, and reviewing it with you was even more fun, dude. So thank you for that.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, dude, thanks for coming on to the show, Artie, and tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on all stream, all platforms. Period. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all under Arty ZiFF. I will say I don't use Twitter and Instagram as much as I used to. Whenever I upload content, you'll see it on there. Outside of that, not much activity. My main channel on YouTube is Arty ZiFF, which it'll be gaming content there. It'll be hip hop content there. It'll be voice acting content there. I am a voice actor by trade as well, so you can see that on the main channel. And my Twitch is Arty ZiFF as well. And the wrestling content you can see under Arty ZiFF on TikTok. And then also I have a backup TikTok for my voice acting content under Joshua L. Guyton, which is my government name. And if you want what I've been most active on recently, if you go on YouTube and search up Pop the Boys, that is the name of my wrestling page over on YouTube, Pop the Boys.
Right on, and my name is Edgar. I'm the host of Snug Wrestling Podcast. Thank you guys for watching and listening and all that good stuff. And we will talk very, very soon later. Ooh, right on, dude. What'd you think?
Beautiful. That was nice, man. You got a great thing going here. I'm gonna go back and binge a couple of these interviews you got just so I can catch up on some stuff. But I enjoyed it a lot. I appreciate you having me on.
Hell yeah, dude. Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm gonna make some clips and edit this, and I'm gonna tag you on everything and all that
Yes,
good
sir.
stuff. So, right on, Artie. I appreciate you, man. You
All
have a
right.
good rest of your night.
You cool. I appreciate it, brother. You too.
Thanks. Later.
All right. Peace.